The fog settles like a soft blanket over the city, muffling sounds into distant whispers. A solitary figure moves through the mist, footsteps barely audible on the damp pavement. Their silhouette blurs at the edges, dissolving into the grey morning. There is a rhythm to their walking, not hurried, not aimless, but purposeful in its quiet. They pause at a street corner, watching the world from a distance. Cars pass like ghosts, their headlights cutting through the haze. People hurry by with coffee cups and briefcases, their lives intersecting without touching. The wanderer remains still, a quiet observer in the midst of motion. What draws someone to the edges of connection? Why do some souls find comfort in the spaces between relationships? The silent wanderer carries an invisible weight, not of sadness, but of something deeper, a longing that speaks in the language of absence. Their solitude is not empty. It is filled with unspoken conversations, with imagined connections, with the echo of belonging that has never quite found its home. We have all felt this pull at some point, the desire to step back from the noise, to find ourselves in the quiet. But for the silent wanderer, this is not a temporary retreat. It is a way of being. They move through crowds like a current flowing against the tide, their presence felt as an absence. People glance their way, sensing something familiar yet distant, a recognition that doesn't quite connect. The psychology of the silent wanderer begins here, in this delicate dance between visibility and invisibility. They are both present and absent, here and elsewhere. Their silence is not empty space, but a canvas for internal dialogue. In the quiet between footsteps, between breaths, between heartbeats, this is where identity forms and reforms itself, where the self speaks to itself in languages only it understands. What if loneliness is not the absence of others, but the presence of something deeper calling to be heard? What if the silent wanderer is not lost, but searching for a different kind of home? One that exists not in places or people, but in the quiet spaces of their own becoming. The silent wanderer embodies a profound psychological paradox, the simultaneous yearning for connection and the protective retreat into solitude. This is not simple introversion or social anxiety, but something more complex, a dance between the desire to be seen and the fear of being truly known. In psychological terms, we're witnessing the tension between attachment and individuation, between the social self and the authentic self. Attachment theory helps us understand the roots of this pattern. From our earliest moments, we learn how to connect, or how not to. For some, early relationships taught that closeness comes with conditions, that visibility requires performance. The silent wanderer may have learned that safety lies in maintaining distance, that the self is safest when kept private. This isn't about rejection of others, but about protection of something fragile within. Jungian psychology offers another lens, the persona versus the authentic self. The silent wanderer often carries multiple masks, the social self that performs for others, and the private self that remains hidden. Their wandering represents the search for integration, for moments when these selves can exist without contradiction. In the solitude of their walks, they shed the expectations and find moments of alignment between who they are and who they appear to be. The looking glass self-concept from social psychology reveals another layer. We form our identity through how we imagine others see us. For the silent wanderer, this process becomes complicated. They may feel that their true self doesn't match the reflection society offers back. So they withdraw, not from people themselves, but from the distorted mirrors they represent. Their solitude becomes a space where they can see themselves clearly, without the interference of others' perceptions. This setup reveals that the silent wanderer's journey is not about escape, but about authenticity. Their footsteps trace the contours of an internal landscape, mapping the distance between who they've been expected to be and who they're becoming. The fog they walk through represents not confusion, but the necessary obscurity that allows for transformation. In the space between visibility and invisibility, between connection and solitude, identity finds room to breathe and grow. To truly understand the silent wanderer, we must dive deeper into the psychological currents that shape their experience. This exploration reveals that their solitude is not emptiness, but a rich internal world where identity formation occurs in its most authentic form. The concept of the inner voice becomes central here. For the silent wanderer, external voices, the expectations, judgments, and demands of others, often drown out their own internal guidance. Their wandering represents a deliberate turning inward, a conscious choice to listen to the quiet wisdom that speaks beneath the noise. This inner voice isn't always comforting. Sometimes it questions. Sometimes it grieves. Sometimes it simply observes. But it is always authentic. Attachment patterns from childhood create the blueprint for how we approach relationships throughout life. For those who become silent wanderers, early attachment experiences may have taught that connection comes with strings, that love requires performance. They learned to protect their vulnerability by maintaining emotional distance. Their wandering isn't rejection of connection, but a search for connection on their own terms. Connection that doesn't require sacrificing authenticity. The Jungian process of individuation, becoming our whole, integrated selves, often requires periods of withdrawal from collective expectations. The silent wanderer is engaged in this sacred work. Their solitude is the alchemical container where different aspects of self can be examined, understood, and integrated. The masks they wear in social situations are set aside during these solitary moments, allowing the authentic self to emerge and breathe. Cognitive psychology reveals another layer. The silent wanderer often engages in deep self-reflection that others might avoid. They confront uncomfortable truths, sit with difficult emotions, and question inherited beliefs. This isn't avoidance of reality, but deeper engagement with it. Their wandering represents a commitment to psychological truth, even when that truth is painful or complex. The emotional regulation required for this journey is immense. The silent wanderer learns to sit with loneliness without being consumed by it, to feel the ache of disconnection without rushing to fill it with superficial relationships. This emotional maturity allows them to choose connection from a place of wholeness rather than neediness. Their solitude becomes not a prison, but a sanctuary where they can develop the emotional resources to engage with the world authentically. Social comparison theory helps explain why the silent wanderer withdraws. In a world that constantly measures worth through external validation, likes, followers, social status, the silent wanderer opts out of this game. Their value system shifts inward. They measure their worth not by how many people know them, but by how well they know themselves. This represents a radical act of psychological independence in a culture that prizes social conformity. The silent wanderer's journey is ultimately about reclaiming agency over their own narrative. In a world that tries to tell us who we should be, they choose to discover who they actually are. Their footsteps mark not a path of escape, but of return. Return to the self that got lost in the noise of expectations. Return to the voice that got drowned out by others' opinions. Return to the belonging that begins within. As we sit with the silent wanderer's journey, something shifts within us. The intellectual understanding gives way to emotional recognition. We begin to see that their solitude is not a deficiency, but a different way of being human, one that our hyper-connected world has forgotten how to value. There is a quiet courage in choosing to walk alone. In a culture that equates visibility with value, the silent wanderer demonstrates that some of the most important work happens in private. Their journey reminds us that identity cannot be crowdsourced, that the self must sometimes retreat from the collective to remember its own contours. We start to understand that the silent wanderer's loneliness is not the absence of others, but the presence of a deeper longing for authenticity, for meaning, for connection that doesn't require compromise. Their melancholy is not depression, but the bittersweet awareness of the gap between how things are and how they could be. It's the ache of potential not yet realized, of selves not yet fully inhabited. The hope that intertwines with their loneliness is not naive optimism, but something more profound. It's the quiet conviction that there is a way to be in the world that honors both connection and autonomy, both relationship and selfhood. Their wandering represents faith. Faith that the path to authentic belonging begins with belonging to oneself. We begin to see the silent wanderer not as someone who has failed at connection, but as someone who understands connection differently. Their relationships, when they choose them, are not based on need or convenience, but on genuine resonance. They connect from a place of wholeness rather than emptiness, offering presence rather than performance. This reflection invites compassion for the silent wanderer and for the silent wanderer within ourselves. We all have moments when we need to step back, to listen to our own inner voice, to remember who we are beneath the roles we play. The silent wanderer's journey becomes a mirror for our own relationship with authenticity and connection. Their footsteps echo not with loneliness, but with the quiet dignity of self-discovery. Their solitude becomes sacred space, not empty, but full of becoming. And in this understanding, we find that the silent wanderer is not lost at all, but deeply, profoundly found. The fog begins to lift as morning turns to day. The silent wanderer stands at the edge of a park, watching children play and couples walk hand in hand. There is no envy in their gaze, only quiet observation. They have found something in their solitude that allows them to appreciate connection without needing to possess it. The resolution of the silent wanderer's journey is not about finding the perfect relationship or achieving social integration. It's about arriving at a deeper understanding that belonging begins within, that the most authentic connections happen when we bring our whole selves to them, not just the parts we think others will accept. Their wandering has taught them that identity is not fixed, but fluid, a conversation between who we've been, who we are, and who we're becoming. The silence they carry is not empty space, but the container where this conversation can happen without interruption. It's where they learn to listen to themselves, to trust their own inner guidance, to build a relationship with the person they're meant to be. The melancholy that once felt like loneliness has transformed into something else, a tender awareness of the human condition. They understand that everyone carries their own quiet spaces, their own unspoken longings. Their hope is not for rescue from solitude, but for the courage to bring their authentic self into connection when the time is right. The silent wanderer turns from the park and continues their walk. Their footsteps are lighter now, not because they've found answers, but because they've learned to live with questions. They understand that the journey towards self is never complete, that identity is always unfolding. Their solitude is no longer a place to hide, but a space to become. In the end, the silent wanderer teaches us that the most profound belonging is not to a place or a person, but to oneself. That the echoes of belonging we seek in others are really the reflections of the relationship we have with our own soul. And that sometimes the quietest footsteps leave the deepest impressions on the path toward home.